Welcome to the Howie Games. Three of the most entertaining athletes on the planet, I reckon. We've got Kofi Kingston, we got the Big E, and we got Xavier Woods. The new day, taking wrestling to a whole nother level. I'll be honest, boys, this is like nothing I've ever done on this show. It is great to see you, Kofi. We'll start with you. How you going, mate?
So far so good, man. You know, we've been in Australia now for 4 days, 5 days?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like a long time, but it's been awesome. Every day has been cool. The people have been so welcoming, as they always are when we come to Australia, so we're just very happy to be here.
Big E, I can see why they call you Big. Like, have a look at the size of this man that you guys go to work with. That's like, I don't know how big those biceps are, but it's nice to have you here, mate. How are you enjoying Australia?
I appreciate it. Thank you. I have a very fragile ego, so thank you for buttering me up.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, there's not many men that come in this studio with bigger arms than me, but I think you've got me covered, to be fair.
Well, I'm good. I'm good. Like Kof said, man, it's been amazing to be here. Woodsy got in Friday, I got in Saturday, Kof got in Sunday. But Saturday, we went to Karen's Diner, and that was a lot of fun in Sydney, just being insulted. That's the first time. I've always wanted to go, just one time, go to one of those restaurants where they just insult you. The service is terrible, so that was fun. But the people here have, honestly, they've just been lovely. Kind of fell in love with Sydney, just a beautiful town. I wish we had more time here in Melbourne, but it's been great so far.
And I'm going to go with Woodsy, since they called you Woodsy. Is Woodsy okay?
Yeah, it's perfect.
I was going to go with X-Man, but we'll go with Woodsy. You look like my type of man. You got your board shorts on. You look relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
How are you enjoying your Australian tour?
I'm having a blast. The fact that the sun is shining and it feels so good to be outside. Everybody's so happy. That's the biggest thing that we've noticed. Just walking around town, people are smiling. And they'll nod to you if you nod to them. And they'll speak to you if you speak to them. It's like, oh, this is how a city should be. It's all walkable. There's delicious food everywhere. It's been awesome.
Well, that's lovely to hear. I've got so many questions for you folks, because your field of endeavour is one that I don't have a great deal of expertise in. But I'd like to get your backgrounds first, Kof. If we start with you, you're actually out of Africa, originally born in Ghana, yeah?
That's right.
Tell me that. So how did you get from Ghana to America?
I think we took a plane.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Okay. I can see why you fit it in Australia, because you're obviously smart ass as you blokes.
I don't know. I was very young. I don't actually remember, you know.
Right.
But
where did your family settle?
I came to the United States when I was about like a year or two old.
Right.
And so we kind of had a roundabout trip. Went from the Illinois area where my parents went to school at the University of Illinois with degrees in library science. My mom has a doctorate degree in anthropology. We went from Illinois to New Orleans. They were working at Northeastern and Loyola there. We went from New Orleans up to the Boston area where they worked at Harvard. My mom did, and then my dad at Northeastern, and then at Boston College.
Wow.
So it's been quite the ride, you know. But somewhere along the way, I became a huge wrestling fan.
How? Like watching it on telly?
I feel like everyone has a story where they remember, like, oh, this is when I knew I was gonna be like a wrestling fan forever. I don't have one of those. I just feel like it's always been a part of my life, and I've always been into wrestling, even before, like, so we have what's called like the Attitude Era in the early 90s. Wrestling really blew up with Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and all these guys, Triple H. But I remember being kind of upset because wrestling was my thing, you know, and then all of a sudden we go to high school and everyone was giving each other like Stone Cold Stunners in the hallway and doing all these moves. I'm like, no, you guys didn't think wrestling was cool until these guys were doing this is mine, you know? But it just speaks to how infectious WWE is, you know, how captivating it is and how captivating it's been for so long. We are the longest running episodic television show in the history of the world.
That's amazing.
So Raw and SmackDown. And this like, we don't have any off seasons, you know, like it's just ongoing, you know, nonstop. And the reason that we're able to do that is because, number one, like the fans and their support, but the ability to tell great stories in the ring. You know, you see a guy like myself going up against a guy like Omos, who is 7 feet plus. You have the telltale story of David and Goliath, and how are we going to tell that story? Who's going to win? Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? And we're able to just like tell stories that are compelling, and that's why we're able to, like, you know, do what we do and go all over the world. You know, here we are in Australia now. And for the people who might not be WWE fans, you can watch us on Binge. You know, all of our content is going to be on Binge going forward. And we're excited about it. Premium live events and Raw and SmackDown, and even like our library of all the history if you want to get caught up on all the latest WWE ongoing sagas and scenarios and storylines. So it's been a wild ride, but again, it's a testament to how interesting in how compelling a product the WWE is.
And how professional you guys are. You're plugging it's on
Come on,
bins.
bruh.
You've done my job for me,
Yes,
which
sir.
is
Come on,
perfectly.
man.
So I want to know. I want to know how you get into it. You talk about school. So is this something you do at school? Like in Australia here, we don't really at school have wrestling teams, but I know it's a big thing in the States. Is that sort of how you get into it? For all those that wanted to become a professional wrestler, you start wrestling on mats at school?
I did.
Okay.
So in my head, I knew I wanted to be a wrestler. Very similar to Kofi. It's just kind of always been in my mind. I feel like it's been in my blood. And so I realized in 7th grade, I said, well, if I want to do this as a job, I should probably do some form of it at all.
7th grade?
Yeah. So
Right.
started amateur wrestling and did that all the way through middle school, high school, played football, ran track, did as many things as I could because it's very important that you are an athlete when you're jumping into wrestling, because when you first enter wrestling school, it's going to be really hard for you if you haven't, been working out with weights, cardio, things like that, or have any sort of base. So I definitely did as much as I could do because I was laughed at a lot when I said I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I was like the smallest kid in class a lot of the time, and we are in a land of giants. So like he said, a guy almost 7 foot plus. He is enormous. That's why I'm glad he's on our team.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you have to take in so many factors where it's, size, speed, strength, charisma, presence. All of those things are what makes a fantastic WWE superstar. So to be able to kind of tap into those things is really important. I would say wrestling is probably the best base for pro wrestling.
And so wrestling in high school, forgive my ignorance, are you going tournaments against other schools? Like, how's it work as a year 7, year 8 kid?
Yeah, so you'll do tournaments against other schools just like that. So you'll go to tournaments on the weekends where there's a bunch of kids not affiliated with schools, and you wrestle against each other. But when you get to high school, you do things like dual meets. So a high school might wrestle against another high school. So everybody on the team will wrestle the person who they're lined up against. So the 103 pounder, the 171 pounder, and then you kind of.
But you're not diving off the ropes at this stage. This is like Greco-Roman
No. This
type?
is You're wearing
Okay.
a singlet. You got your wrestling shoes on. You got a little ankle bands. You're green or red. It's not pro wrestling at all.
Okay.
But that's one of the things that kind of punched me in the face when I started it, because in my head I didn't know the difference at the time.
So you were coming off the ropes and you said what you wanted to do.
I walk into the wrestling room and everyone's just dripping sweat. And it's this hot little like microwave of a room. I'm like, what is this? I'm trying to jump off the top rope and hit people with chairs, and they're like, this is definitely not that, and you are not old enough to do that, but you can start doing this if you want to. And so that was a little bit of a culture shock, but you get adjusted pretty quick.
I want to follow the journey through how you go to what you're doing professionally. But Big E, powerlifting. So footy in college and then powerlifting. I was looking at some of your numbers and thinking about what I do on the bench press, and it was frightening what you do. So powerlifting, tell me about it, and tell me about the weights, the bench press, the squat, etc. And big numbers we're talking here.
Yeah, so I started lifting weights early in life. I started formally. I learned to actually train properly when I was 12. But I remember my dad got me some sand weights. I used to just work out in the garage. I used to just try to do 100 curls. I remember I was probably about like 9, 10 years old. And I remember on Saturdays, I would watch my Saturday morning cartoons. And then as soon as they went to commercial break, I would run to the garage, try to do as many curls as I could, and then run back to
In
watch
the
the next.
break?
Yeah. And I tried to do 100 curls a day. That was how. But when I was 12, I first started lifting, and I just caught the bug. And I really just got strong quickly. And my dad was always very strong. So it's just genetics helped. But it wasn't really, I didn't start competing in powerlifting until I got signed by WWE.
Right.
And we've all trained at John Cena's gym, which is actually about 15 minutes from where I live now. And Rob McIntyre is his like lifelong friend, the best friend. They grew up together, and he trained so many of us. Brilliant trainer, and still like Kofi still uses Rob. He developed an app and whatnot. But anyways, I was training with Rob for a little bit, and he kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, is powerlifting something you might want to try?" And I really liked the idea. I thought it would help give me an identity with wrestling as well while I was training with WWE. So when I was, I think about 24, 25 years old, that's when I started doing the powerlifting training. And I realized with Rob very quickly, I was used to training. I used to lift 6 days a week at one point when I was like very early on, pared that down to 5. But then with him, I was only lifting about 3 days a week. And that was when I was at my very strongest. And for all 3 of those days, we would have there would be the bench day. So we would start with bench, and there'd be a bunch of ancillary exercises around that. and squat and deadlift. So obviously for people who know anything about powerlifting, those are the 3 lifts: squat, bench, and deadlift. And so for me, I just got strong quickly. I competed my first year in the 275-pound division, broke some Florida State records, and then I qualified for nationals the next year in Pennsylvania, and I ended up winning a national title at super heavyweight and got my weight up to about 300 pounds. But yeah, man, I just got a lot stronger. I learned a low bar squat, and my best numbers are a 750 squat.
So hang on, I've got to put this into kilos.
Yeah,
How many
in kilos, I gotta do
That's
Times
up to
2.2.
divided by 200. Yeah, so it'd be
nearly 300
yeah,
kilos.
it'd be over 3.
On a squat.
Yeah, squatting 7. This is raw.
I struggle with the bar, big man. So
I get it. This is raw. This is drug tested as well. But 750 pounds squat.
Yep.
I've deadlifted 806 pounds. That's my best deadlift. And also my best bench press was pretty cool because we actually filmed that at Cena's gym, and he promised me Woods and I were training in the gym at the time, and we were in FCW. I was a nobody. No one knew who I was or anything. And I remember him saying, if you hit this lift, which would have been, it's my lifetime PR, the best bench I've ever had.
Yeah.
If you hit this lift, I'll make sure it's in the documentary. And the documentary they were doing was John Cena versus The Rock. It was billed as
huge.
First time ever at WrestleMania, this whole video package. And he was true to his word. So I hit the 575-pound bench. And the cool thing is, you can see it online on YouTube and whatnot. But yeah, that's
575-pound bench.
How many? You have the converter there too.
How many?
Yeah.
260. So for those that go to the gym, the bar's 20. So that's 620 plates on either side of the bar, man.
So it's a decent amount of weight.
Oh, a decent amount of weight.
Decent amount of weight.
If you watch the video,
Right.
you can see all of us because we were all there on the same day, and we're just freaking out because it's crazy to hear, right?
Yeah.
When you see it, it's unbelievable.
Wow.
And then just the energy in the room, because there's probably 20 of us
about
in
20,
there,
yeah.
and it's great. I highly recommend you go and watch it.
Oh, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
We'll put some audio in here. Just one more on powerlifting, because I'm fascinated by what athletes do to prepare. What type of calorie intake are you requiring to do to be able to lift at that size?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, was making sure to get the proper calories in. So I eat a decent amount now, but then I had to get a lot stronger, and for me that just meant flooding my body with calories. So it's very difficult for me to put weight on and size on eating clean. So I remember at one point, Rob had me eating a whole DiGiorno's pizza every day. So I was just trying to get as many calories, and it sounds delightful. I mean, I like DiGiorno's pizza. You know, if you want to hit me, it's brought to you. But it's but when you're force feeding yourself like that, it's really not pleasant. It wasn't enjoyable. But for me to go from I was about 275 pounds, and at my strongest, at my very heaviest, I was 317 pounds. So I gained a lot of weight. Right now I'm around 250, 255. So that's another 60 pounds. So for me, it was just really about, I had to eat every 2 hours. So I'd eat 7 meals a day. 2 of those would be shakes. But, after my workouts, I would have a pint of Breyer's ice cream and go through about half that every post-workout, because it was just about getting the calories in. And that's the cool thing, is just learning about other powerlifters and guys in strongmen. And a lot of them are like that. They're very disciplined as athletes, and you think disciplined athletes means eating clean and eating the right things.
Yeah.
But to get those calories in, often you're having to do things like eat ice cream or whole pizzas.
All the kids that listen to this show have finally found their sport. Hang on. Now, you mentioned wrestling school. You can explain it to us, Kof. So how do you go from being a kid at school, as you guys were, that were into wrestling, but not professional wrestling, like NFL draft? Baseball, you got spring training, a draft in the NBA. How do you, as a kid and a student, make your way into the pathway to become a professional wrestler?
I think the great thing about WWE and its superstars is that literally everybody has a completely different path.
Okay.
Completely different. So for me, it was, I was wrestling on the independent scene, non-televised, very minor league.
So that's just out in a hall in front of people, yeah?
Yeah,
paying customers.
yeah. And we actually had a tryout at our school. So this was kind of unheard of at the time. But we had to put posters and everything up all over the towns, and we were looking for people who were 6'3", 220. None of which were at the school at the time.
Okay.
None of us had that.
Okay.
So now we're like, man, we come to practice every day. You know what I mean? And this is our dream. We're gonna have a tryout at our school. This is awesome. And they're wanting us to recruit like everybody else who's not here. So we ended up having that tryout, and we had about like 10 different talent scouts there. Name drop a little bit, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was there. Steve Kern was there. Nova, who wrestled as Simon Dean, was there. Mike Bucci. Tim Horner was there from the Midnight Express or Lightning Express. So we had a whole bunch of different, Arn Anderson was there too, a bunch of different talent scouts there. And we probably had about maybe 50 talent from the Northeast of America, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, all that. And so at the time, I was playing a Jamaican character, Kofi Kingston from Kingston, Jamaica. Where you from? Right near the beach, boy. And I had never been to Jamaica. You know what I'm saying? So
Do you know anything about cricket?
No.
Okay, well,
I mean, a little bit. We went to Mumbai. We swung the. Do you call it a bat?
Yes.
Okay,
but
good.
You're not sounding too
swung a
Jamaican
bat,
when you're saying, is it a bat?
But yeah. So we know a little bit, but not much. And at that time, certainly nothing.
Right.
But so we had the tryout, and I ended up having a match. And at the time, I was a bad guy, didn't know what I was doing. And had my match. It was okay. Sat back down. They called a couple people up and they said, Kofi, can you be a good guy? I'm like, yeah, sure. Go up, have a second match. Okay, sit back down. A couple more people go, and they call me back up for a third time. There were some people that they hadn't even gone once. So I knew that they were looking at me,
Why? Why do you reckon they were looking at you?
Because there'd never been like a Jamaican superstar before, or happy-go-lucky, pseudo-athletic, handsome young man like myself. You know what I'm saying? They just like what they saw.
Right.
Much
I
like
get
you
that.
were feeling when I first walked in. You like what you saw. You had the similar vibes. But
And lacking confidence obviously didn't hurt you.
Well, yeah. But it was a cool scenario. So after that tryout, they told me that they were looking at me, and then I got a call like a couple days later, and they said they were going to hire me. So that was my story, And again, it was like right place, right time at the time. I was working full time out of college in a corporate setting where I'd work my 9-hour day. And then
what were you doing?
So I graduated with a degree in advertising, and I worked for the Staples Corporation. Do you have Staples over here?
Yeah.
Like the business or office supplies superstore. So we were responsible for like the 900-page like buyer's guides that would go out. You'd have like chairs in there and panels and
Sounds exciting.
thumbtacks and so like and I always preface it by saying like some people love that stuff.
Absolutely.
For me, it wasn't gonna work. Like this could not be the rest of my life. So when I got that call, they told me I was gonna make it. I was gonna be hired. Called up my boss right away and said, I'm out. You know what I mean? Yeah, I get this in by 2 weeks. I'm out of here. And then we drove down to Atlanta where the developmental territory was at the time. So that was my story. And that was kind of like how you would think that it would go, where like you have a tryout scenario.
Yep.
But a lot of people have different stories, different people from athletic backgrounds and things of that nature. So, I mean, like you guys have different stories too, right?
So what about you, Woodsy?
So I was wrestling on the independent. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
So different region of the U.S. and it's the South, where there's wrestling literally in every town around because we love it down there.
So it's like town hall, and people pack in, the locals go.
Constantly. So to the point where my trainer, we would go to a town where we're having a show, and throughout the day, we'd get in our gear, and we'd get in some sort of altercation on Main Street or at like a drugstore or something. The referee would come and pull us apart. If you guys want to fight each other, you're going to meet at this place at 8 o'clock tonight. And that's how we'd bring people into the shows.
So a show like that, sorry to interrupt you, like what are you getting paid, if you don't mind me asking, at that level of wrestling?
Most of the time, like either nothing or maybe $20.
$20.
Maybe a
okay.
hot dog and a Coke.
Hot dog and a handshake, yeah.
Hot
Yeah,
dog and a handshake.
Hot dog and a
Yeah.
handshake.
So I was working at a daycare at the time. I started
Daycare.
Yeah.
Kids.
Yeah. So I have a degree in educational psychology.
Oh, kids would have
That's
loved you.
My focus. It's such a good time.
Educational psychology.
Yeah. So started training right out of high school and was doing that stuff on the independent scene for the summer. And then I went to college in another state and then found a school up there. And I was wrestling Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, and then driving back to school for class on Monday, then wrestling again Tuesday night. So
with an eye on becoming professional, because you just loved what it was?
I wanted to become a professional. My goal was to get a deal before I graduated college. And I was very lucky to get that at another place. Ended up leaving that place and trying to come to WWE. But in the interim, before I got my contract, I actually found out where the developmental territory was for WWE, and I wanted a job there. And so I asked my teachers. I said, "Hey, if I miss class tomorrow to try to go get a wrestling job, is that okay?" And they're like, "Go live your dream." So I drive up to McDonough, Georgia, and I find the building. I walk in, and you know how in a movie when you walk into a party that you're not supposed to be at, there's a record scratch?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Right.
And so, oddly enough, Kofi is in the ring training.
Yeah.
And I'm in my suit. I've got my folder with my resume, cover letter, a DVD with, you remember LightScribe DVDs?
Yeah.
Had my image on the front, my phone number, my email, a bunch of matches on there, business card. And I just wanted to come and drop my stuff off to see if I could get a job. And so the next day after I talked to them, they're like, "Yeah, sure, you can come back next week." I find out the next morning, my friend texted me. He said, "What did you do?" "What are you talking about?" I said, "WWE's pulling out of Deep South. They're not going to exist anymore." And I was like, "I just had my big break. They told me I could come in." So fast forward a little bit further, I find out where the new place is. It's down in Florida. So I drive down to Florida. I search the town for the whole day, eventually find the building. I walk in again, record scratch. And who's in the ring? Kofi.
In the middle of a drill.
He's there again.
So he's seeing me just come in and just throw my stuff at them because I want a job so bad. And so, like he said, everybody's got a different path. Like Kofi had a tryout at his school. Like I was going to them to like essentially force my way in the door. Because again, I'm not 6'2", I'm not 300 pounds, so I'm not necessarily the person that is going to get picked out of a crowd to come and be a wrestler. But my parents were very adamant in telling me that if there's something that I want in life, like no one's going to give it to me. I have to go get it myself. And if I don't get it myself, I'm the one to blame. So in my head, it said, I have to do everything that I can to get this job. And if I don't, okay, maybe it didn't work out. It wasn't for me. But I'm going to make sure that when I'm an old man, I look in the mirror, I say, I did everything that I could to achieve the goal that I wanted. And so that was kind of my story. I bounced around wrestling in a lot of different places for a while and eventually got picked up by WWE in 2010.
So what the day that you got your break, do you get a phone call? Does
Yes.
someone ring you? Tell me about that.
So I got a phone call. I was in a CVS, which is like a drugstore, you know, and I see, I don't recognize the number, but the area code 203. So I automatically freak out. What's happening? What's happening? And they say, yeah, we want to offer you a contract to come down and, you know, be a part of the crew. And I'm freaking out in this place. I run outside. I'm, yes! Calling on my friends. So that was legit like one of the happiest moments of my life. And then I went home, I packed my stuff, and I moved down to Florida. And now we're here talking to you.
So you move. We'll go to you now, Big E. So you get signed up, right? And then what type of training, instruction, development do you receive before they put you out in front of the bright lights and you become a wrestling star? So what's the next progression? The boys have explained how they get to being signed. Then what happens? Is there a training process from there? What are you blokes laughing at? What's going on?
Yeah, well, they're laughing because typically over the last several years, we've been together for a long time now. We formed in 2014. They're laughing because they always tell their stories, and they have these great, incredible stories of always wanting to do this. They have been passionate about this since they were little kids. They've busted their ass for years and years to finally get to the position, like so many doors being, closed and slammed in their faces. And they always go first and tell these heartwarming stories, and I go last, and I'm the meathead who was just offered a job and said, I guess I'll take it. that was me. And I grew up a fan, but I just, it never occurred to me that this is something I could do. So I played football at Iowa. I had a bunch of knee injuries. I tore in 2.5 years. I tore my left ACL, tore my right ACL, broke my right patella, tore my right patella tendon, and tore my left pec. And
that's a big pec too.
Yes.
What position did you play in footy?
I was actually a defensive tackle, believe it or not. A little, very short for the position, but that's what I played. And anyways, it just never occurred to me that this is something that you could do. And I just knew someone who knew someone who knew someone at Iowa, who knew someone with WWE while I was at Iowa. So there was a man named Mike Doherty who was connected with the Iowa wrestling program. And because amateur wrestling is such a great base, and all three of us were amateur wrestlers in grade school. I was actually a state champion, no big deal. But it's in Florida, though, so it kind of gets... There's a lot of people who really know amateur wrestling. Florida doesn't have the best reputation for amateur wrestling. But anyways, so for me, my story was really just lucking into this job. So that's why they laugh, is because of that. So I lucked into it, but I really found a passion for it very early. And so going back to your question of how we train, so I came in with zero experience. My only experience was the 1-week tryout I did at FCW in Tampa under the WWE umbrella. So I had no idea what I was doing. So I get there, and at the time, I got signed in August of 2009, and the head trainer is Dr. Tom Pritchard. He's a what you call it? Yeah, wrestling legend. Yeah. He's been around for a long time. But it was him, Norman Smiley, who I grew up watching. I remember Billy Kidman was down. He'd come back and forth. And then at some point later, Joey Mercury came in. But so for me, those two, Kofi and Woods, they came in with a much better base and understanding of what they were doing in the ring. If anything, maybe some fine tuning or learning how to wrestle under the WWE umbrella. So for them, they came in with a lot of tools already. For me, it was really building from the ground up. So we would train on Mondays and Tuesdays for about 3 hours a day. And it was about hammering home the basics. So simple things like front rolls, learning to run the ropes. And I know like a lot of what we do for people looks easy, but you would be floored. There are so many guys who come from, I've seen pro bodybuilders, I've seen people who played rugby internationally for years, people from all kinds of incredible athletic backgrounds who come in to do a tryout and they don't last. They can't make it because hitting the ropes looks easy, but you do that for what? 10 minutes and you realize your ribs are all beat up, your back sore. People don't understand that chews you up, and a lot of people can't make it. So you do that, running the ropes, learning how to take a bump correctly, which is falling down and hitting the mat, learning to tuck your chin and take care of yourself so you don't get hurt, so you don't give yourself a concussion. So it was a lot of those things of just drilling the basics over and over and over again. So that was what I did definitely for the first year or so, was just working on fundamentals on a regular basis. So we did that Monday and Tuesday, 3 hours a day. Wednesday would be promo class. And if anyone knows wrestling whatsoever, you know the name Dusty Rhodes. Yep. Dusty Rhodes is a legend. The late great Dusty Rhodes, he passed away several years ago. Rest in peace to Dusty. But Dusty was the man at the time who really ran creative for FCW. So, and again, I didn't really fully explain FCW. So FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, is the minor league system, or was at the time, for WWE. So if you got signed, everyone had to go down to Tampa, trained at FCW with the hopes of eventually getting called up.
So it's like the minors roster. And then you're trying to step up to the majors.
Exactly.
Got ya.
So Dusty was in charge of, we would have promo class. So for a couple hours every Wednesday, we would, kind of prepare a monologue or a skit or whatever it was. And you would stand up there in front of your peers and you would cut what we call a promo. And afterwards, Dusty would give you his criticisms and he would tell you, work on that. Change this.
So what type of thing? So ostensibly now you're becoming an actor as well as an athlete.
Yeah.
So you're delivering a monologue, and what are you saying? More vibrancy here, or less of this, or how's that process work to get the entertainment down pat?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to really say because what we do is so subjective. Yeah. So it's hard to know I feel like you just know what a good promo is when you hear it.
Yeah, a lot of it is based on just your presence and your character. And can this be interesting? So it might not be a good promo. The words might not be good. The concept might not be good, but the character might be great. So it'll tell you, this character, that we did something with a guy, the humongous hobo. So like that character might go, oh, that's great. It's catchy. You laughed. Cool. Now let's develop that for the next 3 months and see if there's anything there. See if it's got legs. And if it doesn't, cool. Try something else because it's developmental. You're developing your character. And that's honestly the most important thing because the wrestling aspect, yes, extremely important. Understanding how to keep yourself safe and your dance partner safe in there. But if you can't get people in that crowd to pay money to come and see you because you're interesting, then wrestling's not going to really work out. And so that's something that we really work hard on to make sure that people can relate to what we're doing and that they can grab onto it, something that little kids can, impersonate with their friends, get Halloween costumes, anything that you can kind of make fun of is something that you can build on character-wise.
Yeah, so that's really crazy too, just because so we've been talking about this in a lot of different interviews about how rigorous the training is in the physical aspect, and this is something that we know, but when you really sit here and talk about it and the amount of time that we put into just getting the basics right, doing the rolls and making sure that everything is done to a point where you can't get hurt, the grand scheme of things, that's not the most important thing, not even by a long shot. It is the character that is important, being able to identify with people, being able to relate to people, being able to put on a show that has so many different entities that everybody who watches can have somebody to identify with, you know? So as rigorous as the physical aspect is, it's an important part, but I feel like it's a very small part of what makes us successful. We have to be entertaining. We have to be able to draw people in and be interesting and then do it in a different way. We have so many people on the roster that have these personalities. So it's like, okay, well, I can't do that because this guy does this. This guy does that better than me. What can I bring to the table that is interesting, that is different, that is unique, that is going to be able to, allow people to invest their time, their money, you know what I mean, their emotion into me. And that's where, that's what we try to find as performers. That's what everyone's trying to really do.
So you search and try to find, but you don't know where to go. So many thoughts flood through your mind.